Ashwini Vethakan. This week on Talking Business, joining me is the Director of Corporate Affairs at MAS Holdings, Rajitha Jayasuriya. Welcome to the show, Rajitha. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Now you work in many areas. What are the pitfalls that you've come across when maintaining corporate governance in Sri Lanka?
From a country point of view, I think many, because policies are generally driven by political intentions. I don't even know if it's controversial to say this, but it's very rarely that corporates or the public is consulted on the intentions or the need for the country or the people itself when policies are drafted and implemented. And from there comes the inability sometimes, especially in the public sector, for people to make decisions and stand by them, because there is so much of they'll be reprimanded, or there'll be implications to them continuing in their journey. So people are scared to make decisions. And then most public sector employees are not really well remunerated either, and that leads to then corruption setting in. So from a governance point of view, there are so many issues that we need to first think about. How do we empower people? How do we remunerate people really well from a public sector point of view? Then how do we bring in good structured legal policies or corporate governance policies or country policies, policies that really help the people and the country and empower our people to really work towards upholding these policies. This also sort of lands true with the corporate sector. I think with the downfall that we saw in the financial collapse in the late 2000s, 2008, a lot of companies understood the governance, the importance of governance. And most companies made great strides in bringing in place good policies, structured, robust policies around corporate governance. While there is a great move towards bringing in better governance even in the corporate world, we still I think that there's still room for a lot of improvement. We need to bring in more awareness. We must emphasize on the importance of ethics, the importance of being transparent, and also empower people to speak up and call out when they see wrong being committed. So very good, robust whistleblower policies are also important in order to maintain a robust system when it comes to governance.
IP law is another aspect that you work with. So could you give us an overview of IP law as it exists in the country?
Yeah, so Sri Lanka has actually a good framework in terms of IP law. In 2003, Sri Lanka brought into place the new Intellectual Property Act, which is based on the TRIPS agreement. This is a trade-related intellectual property agreement that was signed by the WHO countries. So it's a good legal system that we have in place. The issues that we would face mostly in terms of intellectual property in these countries, the enforcement area needs to get improved significantly. We need to create more awareness about what intellectual property rights are with people, so that they understand what their rights are and how to enforce them.
With it being International Women's Month, let's focus on workplace inclusivity and, more importantly, gender-based inclusion. What are your thoughts on the private sector when it comes to this aspect?
I think we have a long journey to go, so I'm not going to start on a negative, but at the same time there is great strides that have been taken to change policies, to bring in more inclusivity, to change gender biases, to change unconscious biases. MAS as a corporate, we've taken massive steps. We've always believed in the principle of empowering women, and that focus has mostly always been at our team member level, because we are a large organization and a large population of our workforce is female. So with that comes a need to ensure that that large segment of the population are empowered, because they don't always come from the same backgrounds that we do as executives. So they do need a lot of help, and the focus has been for several decades empowering the women on the shop floor. But in the last decade or more, there has been a concerted effort, the understanding that we need to bring in more female leadership, more female thinking, inculcate a culture where we encourage more women to stay on in the workforce. And there's been a concerted effort towards that, from bringing in sponsorship programs, mentorship programs, changing workplace standards in terms of flexible work hours, bringing in childcare. So a lot of work is being done right now to ensure that we bring in more women into the leadership levels.
You mentioned gender biases, Rajitha, and most of the time this is something people grow up with. So how difficult is it to change something that's been ingrained since birth?
I think it's hard because of the culture that we've been sort of brought up in, principally Asian culture. Traditionally, it's a very patriarchal society that we've grown up in as well, right? So traditionally we are taught men are the hunters and the gatherers, the women are the people who, the segment of the workforce who stay at home, bear children, be the caregivers. And we sort of grow up playing with dolls while boys grow up playing with guns and cars. So we are literally brought up, we are almost programmed to think that we have different roles in life. So it is difficult to break that, and I think the education needs to start very young in life. We have to empower children to think beyond any limitations that society puts on them, and we have to encourage them to be who they want to be, irrespective of their gender. And I think it is an uphill journey, but what is encouraging is that most corporates have taken this on as something that they need to do, creating a lot of awareness about gender biases, both conscious and unconscious. So it is an uphill task, but what's encouraging is that we are making great strides in changing this mindset.
With 52% of the population being women, do you believe we are doing enough to bring this growing segment into the workplace?
No, I don't think we are. Again, at the risk of sounding controversial, simple things like transportation for women. A woman gets into a public bus and they are harassed. If they are harassed, what is the means that they have? A secure means to go make a complaint and uphold their rights. They are victimized time and time again. Our overseas workers, they are abused, they are harassed. How do we uphold their rights? How do we encourage more women to stay in the workforce in the public sector, similar to what the corporates are doing? How are we providing for childcare? A lot of the people in the public sector have to take public transport. So just a thought, as a new mother, I know what a struggle it is to sort of balance your personal life and make sure that your work doesn't get sort of overlooked, your official work. And having a 24/7 job, we never switch off in our organization. So we are constantly switched on because of the fact that we are working in multiple countries. But if you look at the public sector, people have to take care of their children. Who do they leave their children with? Who is thinking about providing childcare for these women? Who is thinking of providing secure environments for these women to even work in? There's a lot of biases in the public sector as well, and just as much as the corporate sector. But who is really working towards educating the people in the public sector to change those conscious and unconscious biases? We have a lot of work to do in that part of the workforce, I believe.
Now you work in an industry that employs a greater number of women than most. What lessons have you learned over the years that could be inculcated across the board in a national level?
I think one of the most simple principles is respect. And that's just honestly coming from our founders, where very early on in their journey they decided everybody is equal. We have to treat people with respect. Yes, we are going to be operating in factory environments. How do we make people comfortable? So it's just about respect, treating people like human beings. How would you like to be treated if you are out in society, whether you are a man or a woman? And that's just the way that you need to treat the other person. And that's how you build respect. And from that comes equality and the empowerment for women, or whether it be a man or a woman, to speak up and to follow the courses that they really want to in their lives. I don't think anything would hold them back if we can build in that confidence and respect from very early on in our journeys.
We'll be going in for a short break right now.
Oh gosh, look at the crowd.
Come this way. Those who spread goodness radiate happiness to everyone around them. Introducing LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
Welcome back to the show as we continue our discussion with Rajitha Jayasuriya. Let's move on to innovation. What do you think needs to be done to better protect the IP rights of Sri Lanka?
Again, I would say awareness, because if people don't understand what their rights are, they can't protect them. It's insane how many people we speak to who don't understand that they've created something amazing, that there is intellectual property rights behind what they've created, and how many people would copy it or steal ideas of these young innovators or poor innovators. I've come across so many who sort of, walked up to us and asked, I've done this, and do you think there is anything good in it? And before we can even ask the question, it's been, we spoke to somebody else and like we showed them how to do this, and now they want to commercialize it, so they don't have licensing agreements, they have not protected their intellectual property by way of a patent or a trademark. So I think awareness is so critical in that sense. If people understand what their rights are, then they would like protect their innovations better. So awareness, more robust policies in terms of enforcement, these two areas I would say are pretty critical when it comes to protecting innovations and ideas of people.
For innovation and value addition to take off, we need to think differently, to think outside the box. But our education system is still all about rote learning. How can we change this?
Start at a very young age. If you look at children, like the curious nature that kids have, right? Everything that they see, they want to touch or put into their mouth, or they want to feel, or they want to break it apart, they whack it on the ground. What do? We stop them. Don't put that in your mouth, don't break that, don't bang that. We really stifle that innovative thinking very in our growth cycle. It's stifled at a very young age. I want to disagree with you. I think Sri Lanka has great potential and great talent, and there are some incredible innovations and inventions coming out of this country. People have very creative ideas and thinking, but it's squashed at a very young age. We are told not to be curious. So I think we need to really encourage that curious thinking from a very young age, not work toward narrowing our children's thinking, expand their learning experiences to become more experiential, and move a little bit away from like the notebooks and the more academic side of things. Allow them to create, allow them to fail, and let them know that failure is not the end of the world. You pick yourself up and you keep going and you try again, and that's when the best creations and innovations come out, right? Incorporating some of this into our education system as well, and giving maybe understanding and awareness about intellectual property rights from a very young age, so that children will understand and they will grow up with this knowledge, and if they have creative abilities, they will know how to harness it and protect it to derive economic benefits, just not for themselves but also for the country.
How can organizations engage and attract Gen Z into the workforce?
I think creating a culture where everybody feels included, and if organizations can be dynamic and change with times and understand the value that this Gen Z is bringing, it's basically unfettered thinking, because the Gen Zs have grown up in an environment where they had so much of access to information at their fingertips. When I was growing up, we didn't have www, right? I mean, we had to go into a library and look up, what we want to read. It's only when we became a little bit older and in my university education that, we took more advantage of the internet and everything that it afforded us. So I think it's just basically understanding what the Gen Zs can bring in, the value, the creativeness, the out-of-the-box thinking, and they're entrepreneurs because they have had that upbringing where they've had so much of access to information and knowledge. And I think they can bring in a lot of value to organizations. So I think we have to create the right culture to make it more inclusive and bring in this right thinking so that we can be dynamic and move with the times and be more current and relevant.
Women in the workforce face a number of issues, Rajitha, and you being a breaker of glass ceilings, what advice would you give these women to better handle these issues?
Just be who we are. Don't let social biases and expectations, whether it's be a conscious bias against our gender or ability or capabilities, or even a social expectation of who you have to be as a woman, hinder you. We will always have struggles in our lives, whether it be in our personal lives or in our corporate journeys. There will always be obstacles to overcome. I think women have to realize and accept that we are absolutely resilient. We have strengths beyond what we even know that we hold actually. So we have the ability to overcome any challenge and not to give up. And if we fall, we get up and face the next day stronger than we were today. And that's what I would encourage women to do. No journey is easy, but it has to be with hard work that we have to, make ourselves seen and heard. it's really easy to say, there isn't enough gender representation in the corporate world or in the public sectors, and we need to have more women. We can't make it, yes, it can be a quota-based system, but when we get there, we have to know that we have to earn our seat. So we have to work hard. And just over the last week, I heard that it takes 8 years for women to really get to where men are, 8 years longer than what men take to get to a certain position in life. All this may be true, but these are things that we are working to change. But in doing so, I think women have to also understand that we have to work hard, we have to be true to ourselves, we have to be authentic, and bring the best version of ourselves to the forefront. And if we have a challenge, we just simply pull from the strength that we have within us and work to overcome it.
Well, that's all the time we have for this segment. Thank you for joining us, Rajitha. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
After a short break, we will return with Life on Earth. Stay tuned.
Our story is one of reimagining. Reimagining who you can be, what you can achieve, and how SEMA can support you. As technology and digital platforms disrupt businesses, we are reimagining what the profession can be. We've updated our syllabus to meet the expectation of employers, ensuring SEMA-qualified professionals have the skills to make an impact from day one. Reimagine your career. Contact SEMA Sri Lanka.
Welcome back. Now let's take a look at Life on Earth. Coordination consumes a majority 60% of an employee's day, with a mere 26% spent on meaningful work, with 14% for forward-looking strategy. According to the Anatomy of Work Index 2021 report published by Asana, this creates chaos, confusion and burnout, hindering productivity as a result. This affects organizations of all sizes and across all industries as they lose countless hours to what the report refers to as work about work. These issues must be addressed through meaningful changes to how we work. To build resilience and agility, businesses need to empower employees with clarity, transparency, and accountability, which can enable greater productivity and engagement, while work management can help corporates thrive in the coming year. The modern workplace was fundamentally disrupted last year, leading to the acceleration of digital transformation initiatives. However, the legacy of the old way continues to hamper productivity in the form of work about work. For example, desk-side conversations at physical offices enabled information to flow organically through informal catch-ups or quick conversations. Replacing this with 30-minute meetings wastes time for skilled work, reducing plunging productivity. In addition to this, organizations face a duplication dilemma. A lack of clarity on roles, ownership, and purpose of deliverables, combined with more messages, meetings, and tools, resulted in employees losing 236 hours to the duplication of efforts in 2020. To tackle this, companies must foster a culture of clarity, enabling teams to understand who is doing what and avoid duplication. According to workers, the top 3 priorities for organizations this year are focusing on technology to help teams work efficiently, flexibility in working hours, clearer processes, and more clarity on priorities. Asana reports that 87% of respondents worked nearly 2 hours later every day last year. Additionally, while teams were having fewer ad hoc conversations, workdays have not become shorter as casual chats have been replaced by unnecessary meetings. As a result, 157 hours of productivity were lost in 2020. When it comes to the workforce, 34% of those surveyed say the flexibility of working remotely helps them focus more. Meanwhile, 44% of respondents say they will be motivated by work that is engaging and enjoyable. 39% say they will be motivated by knowing their work will add value to the businesses, and 37% say they will be motivated by knowing their work will support career progression. According to the report, 29% of those consulted stated they felt overworked from a lack of clarity on tasks and roles. However, 28% of respondents believe that work can be improved with encouragement to take daily, uninterrupted focused time for deep or skilled work. That's all we have for you this week. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.